Hey everyone, Gelibabba here with a getting started guide for BFA Frost Mage. In this guide I'll be going over the optimal Azerite stat priority talents and gameplay you should be using in the new expansion. Be aware that none of this is set in stone however, as this is information based on the beta PvP server. As Frost, you generally don't want to be moving away from these talents. I'll go in depth in this segment of why that is. For this tier, I would almost always recommend Ice Nova. Ice Nova allows you to shatter your Comet Storm every time due to their similar cooldowns. This talent also allows you to have your Water Elemental, who also gives you access to another Nova, which is great for shattering flurries and crowd control. Your pet also does significant passive damage, often ending up with around 7% of my total damage done. If you are facing a comp such as Athlete SP or Athlete Asa, who are likely to kill your pets, I would recommend playing Lonely Winter. Although Lonely Winter no longer increases your orb damage, the increase on Flurry, Ice Lance and Frostbolt is still significant. As with last expansion, I am expecting Lonely Winter to become the go-to talent as the seasons roll by. This is due to the higher gear meaning higher damage, making it more valuable than the utility of Pet Nova / Ice Nova. For this tier, I would recommend Shimmer. This allows you to blink while casting, resulting in far more sheep landing on healers and smoother gameplay than playing without. Alternatively, when facing classes with stuns, you can potentially swap to Ice Flows. This will allow you to once again blink out of stuns and give you an ability allowing you to move while casting. I'd recommend playing this versus comps such as Windwalker DK Holy Paladin, a comp that you negate their go with blinking out of the stuns and is made easy to kite by run casting Blizzard. When playing with Ice Flows, I would always recommend trying to apply a slow to the healer first if you're trying to crowd control them. This will make sure that they cannot run around the pillar before you finish your cast. For this tier, I recommend taking Incanter's Flow. This allows you to time your burst with the high stacks, resulting in a lot more damage dealt. Although the spell damage is lower than Rune of Power, it does not require any setup and is up 100% of the time. On the other hand, Rune of Power will allow you to burst harder than Incanter's Flow. This is due to it giving you 40% spell power rather than a cap of 20%. However, I generally wouldn't recommend this talent as it requires pre-planning of your burst and will not always be off cooldown when you need it. When queuing 2 DPS 2's comps into other 2 DPS 2's comps, I recommend taking mirror images over Incanters. This is due to the passive damage they bring, allowing you to consistently be applying pressure even while lining. The images also keep the enemy slowed for you, allowing you to kite very easily. This tier is a pretty mixed bag on what's right and what's wrong. Personally I favour Frozen Touch in games where I can free cast. This allows you to generate more flurries and Fingers of Frost, making Frostbolt a much more variable global where you can chain cast them. Alternatively, I recommend playing Chain Reaction. This talent will be up pretty much whenever you are bursting, giving you a small damage bonus on one of your best abilities. However, it is largely insignificant as the occasions when you reach 5 stacks on bursting is quite rare. Currently, I don't recommend playing with Evanbolt unless you have spec'd out of Deep Shatter. This is due to it dealing around 20k max damage for a 2-second cast. Comparatively, Ice Lance are doing around 13k. One of the strengths of Evanbolt being dual scored in the past is also removed, so it's no longer a globe you can use when locked out on Frost. Overall, Evanbolt was only real worthwhile if you have spec'd out of Deep Shatter and you feel like the caster damage with an on-demand flurry proc is worth to your comp. Frigid Winds will make your Frostbolt a 65% snare and will give you access to the strongest slow in the game, the 85% Cone of Cold slow. I recommend running Frigid Winds as your go-to talent here. This allows you to kite very easily against melees and allows you to line easier against other casters. Swapping out to Ring is a good choice when you need the CC, such as playing Rogue Mage Mirrors or Wind vs Resto Druids. Be aware that Resto Druids now have Hibernate back, so when you're playing with one you probably don't need to take Ring versus other Druids if they shift the stun. When facing any melee cleaves, I recommend opting for Frigid Winds as it increases your defensive potential greatly. Due to the high amount of damage it puts out, I recommend always running Comet Storm. When used to its full potential, this ability will often be your first or second highest damage done, which is simply too good to give up. Alternatively, you could opt for Freezing Rain when playing a comp that requires you to kite melees while dealing consistent pressure such as God comp versus TSG. The Freezing Rain chain will allow you to get all back faster and also instantly apply your slow to both DPS. Coupled with Frigid Winds, this will allow you to constrain the enemy with instants more frequently. For level 100 talent here, you'll be taking Ray of Frost. Ray now deals significant damage in a much shorter channel than before. It also has the ability to go through pillars, so when combined with Shimmer, you can deal damage safe from interrupts. Taking Ray of Frost is also important as it allows you to access your icicles, compared to using Glacial. Furthermore, Ray of Frost also generates 2 Fingers of Frost procs and can shatter with your Pet Nova for insane burst at its end. For Glacial Spike build, you will of course be taking Glacial Spike. This denies your icicles from shooting off from your Ice Lancers and instead gives you a Chaos Bolt-esque ability, which deals between 30 to 75k HP on targets with 150k HP pools. Safe to say, it's pretty dangerous when playing caster comps. When playing Glacial Spike, it's very important to remember that once again the size of your icicles are irrelevant and it's only the buffs you have up at the time of launching Glacial Spike that matter. So even if you have the best icicles in the game versus the worst icicles in the game, it'll be the same size Glacial if you have the same buffs. Next up is PvP talents. Although you will often be running the same talents in many matchups, there are some talents that you may want to change on a play-by-play basis. I recommend always taking Concentrated Coolness. This is due to it allowing you to orb your kill target regardless of where you are positioned. It also increases your damage of the orb by 30%, one of the biggest increases of your DPS from any of the Honor talents. Temporal Shield is a great talent that you will generally always want to play with. Allowing you to live setups where your healer has been CC'd is a strength of Temporal Shield versus many comps. However, in some cases the talent is not necessary. This is often due to swapping it for Kleptomania versus Druids. Kleptomania is once again a must-have versus Restoration Druids, as it completely negates the healing on any setup you are able to land. Kleptomania can often be taken instead of Temporal Shield, as the Hot Tube Purge not only help you offensively, but also a good amount of healing for yourself. Prismatic Cloak is, as always, still a good talent. However, due to the nature of the game currently, it is not must-have anymore due to the low amount of burst damage casters have. Although this talent does have its uses, it is often currently not necessary unless facing a Destruction Warlock or a God comp who would typically be playing Glacial Spike. Frostbite is another strong optional talent. This talent is strong for getting shatters off your orb/Comet Storm and makes it a lot easier to kite melees. However, due to mainly running pets now, the Novas will often be DR'd and frankly, aren't needed to kite since Frigid Winds is currently so powerful. Frostbite is particularly effective versus Fury Warriors who are otherwise immune to slow effects, and is often a good choice when paired with Freezing Rain as to apply to both melees. Deep Shatter is once again pretty underwhelming. However, since it no longer removes Ice Lance Fingers of Frost procs, it can be taken as a way to deal a little bit more damage when you're running out of procs. When paired to Frigid Winds, Burst of Cold can be a great tool when facing up against melees. This talent can allow you to have a 10-second 85% snare, which would render any melee useless. In conclusion, I would recommend always playing Concentrated Coolness. Following this, you can choose between Temporal Shield or Kleptomania depending if you're facing a Resto Druid. Finally, you can choose between Deep Shatter for more damage, Prismatic versus heavy damage caster comps, and Burst of Cold or Frostbite versus melee cleaves depending on your preference. As far as Azerite traits go, Frost Mage class picks are pretty underwhelming. Ranging from slight increase in Frostbite damage, slight increase in Ice Lance damage, and the absurd hard class flurry damage spec, I would be lying if any of these really mattered. With that being said, what I have found to be very strong is stacking the secondary Azerite trait, Earthlink. Earthlink cycles at a similar speed to Incantus Flow, giving a maximum of 1026 intellect in its highest cycle. This means that if you're timing your damage correctly, you can be getting some pretty insane Comet Storm shatter numbers when you burst. If you are unable to obtain Earthlink pieces, I would try to get your hands on some Cauterizing Blink gear for added survivability since it pairs so well with Shimmer. Cauterizing Blink will give you a small ticking heal and can be great for added survivability, especially in PvP2. Outside of these two traits, I would recommend either the Whiteout trait, which increases your Ice Lance damage since this is what you usually burst with, or the Ton of Ice trait. This will allow you to build up slightly bigger icicles and ever so slightly bigger shatters. As a Frost Mage, you are heavily reliant on your Shatter mechanic to deal damage through Fingers of Frost and Comet Storm Ice Nova combos. However, on the beta currently you will not be hitting your ideal crit cap due to the stats being so low. Unfortunately, much like crit, all of your other stats are also very low percentage currently, so as to improve general gameplay, I would recommend a Haste, Versa, Mastery, Crit build. This will allow you to land polys easier with the fastest haste levels. I then recommend Versa as your secondary stat due to its flat damage increase on its all abilities and defensive capabilities. Alternatively, you could choose to go for a damage heavy build by prioritizing Mastery over Haste. This allows you to deal significantly more damage with Icicles and Frozen Orb, with the drawback of long casts. I would recommend this build in caster comp matches where you're attempting to kill with raw/instant damage, making the large Icicles and Orb damage high value. As far as bad stats go, I wouldn't tell you to avoid any of them thus far, due to stats being so low overall. The absolute crit cap for Shatter is 33%, so any amount of crit to that point is still not a bad stat to have. For enchants, I would recommend either Mastery or Haste depending on the gameplay you want to carry out. In the past I would have always recommended the Haste weapon proc regardless of which playstyle you want to achieve. However, due to the Mastery changes to increase Orb damage and Icicles being easy to generate with Flurry procs, with right timing, Mastery proc can increase your Icicle and Orb burst significantly. Now let's get into racials. For allied races I would recommend Dark Iron Dwarf. This is due to the Human Trinket CD nerf, resulting in the extra trinket not being as valuable. Dark Iron is also currently great as in this Sass Rogue meta, removing high hitting bleeds while being rewarded with substantial intellect buff is a really great offensive and defensive trade. Following Dark Iron Dwarf, I would recommend Lightforged Draenei due to the on-use damage which can be helpful in those situations where you're bursting with Orb but not getting the Fingers procs fast enough. Lastly, I would recommend Human still, for the trinket and passive stats it gives. However, once again, due to the Human nerf, it has become less desirable. For Horde racials, I would recommend Orb due to the Blood Fury intellect buff and the passive stun reduction. Although it does not stack with Relentless anymore, it is still a great passive to have, as you generally still only die in stuns as Frost. Alternatively, you could also go Troll, which gives you a 3-minute cooldown haste buff and makes all snares applied to you last shorter, making it slightly easier to kite. Overall, I would recommend Dark Iron Dwarf, as it is great into many dot classes, Warlock, SP, Feral, and Asa Rogue, and it gives a fantastic damage bonus with it. However, if the meta is more based around sub-rogue comps such as Rogue, Mage, or Thug Cleave, I'd recommend Orc or Human for the additional survivability. Dealing damage as a Frost Mage is much similar to that of Legion. Your main damage is composed of building up Icicles and a Flurry proc, and comboing these with Comet Storm, Ice Nova, Frozen Orb, and Fingers of Frost Ice Lances to deal a large amount of instant damage. Outside of this, you should be looking to generate Icicles or Flurry procs, and spam Blizzard on as many targets as possible to bring your Orb off cooldown as soon as possible. Your ideal opener as a Frost Mage is to generate as many Icicles or a Flurry proc as possible and set your Orb down where you have procs. After this, you should aim to be tracking your Incanter's Blow and Earthlink proc, and time your Comet Storm Ice Nova Shatter together for the most amount of damage possible. This is not only your opener damage, but also your main goal when attempting to do any burst throughout the game. 1. Build Icicles and fish for a Flurry proc. 2. Make sure Comet Storm is off CD and you're able to shatter with either a Flurry, Pet Nova, or Ice Nova. 3. Release your Comet Storm into a Nova and Ice Lances to release your Icicles. When opening from stealth in a comp like Rogue Mage, you should be looking to place your Orb as to let your Incanter scale and build Fingers procs. Following this, you should Comet Storm followed by Ice Nova and any Fingers procs you have generated. Okay, so that wraps it up for this Getting Started Frost Mage guide. I hope this helps guide you along through BFA. I'm Gelly Bubba, and I'll see you next time.